Fantastic. So my name is Sharon Coleman. I am the host of the Perfection Rejection Show, how to finally overcome your perfectionism and get shit done. And I am here today with Melina Palmer. I'm skipping over to my cheat sheet here. Melina is the host of the Brainy Business podcast and has dedicated her career to seeking answers to why people say one thing and do another, how the brain actually works, and what really drives our behavior. She uses behavioral economics to help companies and entrepreneurs understand the psychology of why people buy, unlocking the secrets of small changes that make a big difference. Through her podcast, her public speaking, and her column on Inc.com. I am so looking forward to this. It's going to be fun picking your brain.
Yes, thank you.
So welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I'm really into brain science too. I think it is so much fun. And I would just love to delve into a little bit about what does make us make those buying decisions. Like what does make us tick?
Right. So the basics of behavioral economics, the reason the field even came about is because traditional economics really had a problem in that it assumes logical people making rational choices in everything that we do, which is not the world that we live in. And so you end up with a lot of economic models that are incorrectly predicting behavior. And so when you've incorporated now psychology and neuroscience and all these other factors been finding that there are common threads in the way that the brain makes decisions, and that can be applied in the way I help people to see this is in your own decision making, understanding how you make choices as a person, and then how you're marketing to others. The biggest real finding, and that I know people are surprised to learn, is that your subconscious brain is making 99% of all of your decisions every single day. And actually the highest study I've seen puts it at 99.999% of everything that you're doing. Right. So the subconscious is processing based on rules, what it's done before, what it knows. And it's saying, that's normal. That's normal. I know how to do this. And it only flags your conscious brain when it doesn't know how to do something, or you really need to focus because your conscious brain is a lot slower and takes more time to process and whatnot. So even when you think you're making a logical, conscious choice to buy something or to whether you're going to litter or not, really those are based on rules in your subconscious.
But interestingly, all those rules aren't necessarily accurate.
Well, what it is that they end up being sometimes applied in spaces where they're not helping us so much. So our brains, humans, are really drawn towards scarcity, and we think scarcity means value. And so there's only one left. You should act now, and you go, oh my gosh, I need to buy this right now. Whereas if there were 1,000 left or unlimited and it didn't say that, if you didn't know that it was scarce, you wouldn't take the same action or think it's as valuable, as important as it appears to you. So sometimes when it comes to buying, there are these little things that can shift the decisions that we make. And if you put two choices up, someone might pick this one, but if you add a third choice, then they're going to pick this one instead, even though these two options didn't change. But if you put in something else, it can change what looks like it's the best value or the thing that someone should buy, even when all those features, benefits, prices stayed exactly the same.
Interesting. So is it better to have two choices or three choices, or is that like situation dependent?
It is situation dependent. However, in general, 3 choices would be really the kind of optimal way to go. And this is a concept called relativity. It's the focus of episode 12 of my podcast, The Brainy Business. But if you were to take 2 items that are pretty similar to one another, but one is clearly better. So if you're in real estate and you're showing houses, you have 2 colonials, one needs a new roof, and one is in pristine condition, you would also want to show like a modern house to somebody. And most everybody will pick the colonial that does not need the new roof as the house that they want to buy, because it's got a comparison. It's clearly better than this one. And I feel like I've done some due diligence in making my choice because I saw one other type of house, and then this is the one for me.
Wow, that's kind of fascinating.
It's all fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So to switch the topic sort of at a right angle and bring it back to perfectionism, since you know so much about how the brain works. So what is going on in our brains when we're overly focused on getting the right choice?
The thing about mindset, so I love, and I'm really doing a lot of focus on mindset in my business right now as well, is it's just at the core of all decisions that we make, and people can so easily get hung up. I too am a recovering perfectionist. This is my jam for sure. I spent a long time never, I'm a classically trained opera singer, and I do a lot of vocal performance, but I would never sing karaoke unless I know every single word to that song, because I want to make sure I look as good as possible. Right.
Right.
So
for karaoke, where everybody's making a fool of themselves. Right.
Yeah. But I've got a reputation to uphold and all of this. Right. So in my own mind. Right. So when you get into things with perfectionism, that can really get to a space. There's a concept that's called bike shedding. And this is where you have a big thing that you should be working on. So you're supposed to be working on, promoting your show, or you're working on upping your social following on Instagram or whatever. But that's a really scary big task that I don't want to be working on. So instead, I'm going to focus on this little thing. I really need to get my landing page perfect before I can do this. And I'm going to evaluate over and over and over and over and over, so I don't actually have to deal with the big scary thing that's over here. And the excuse you can use is perfectionism as to why you can't get there, because you're stuck kind of in this space. So you dwell on these smaller things instead of having to deal with the big thing, and you can always sort of live in that safe space.
And so in terms of that, like can you give some examples of some of the bigger things?
Right. So I know that I have a lot of people work with me on pricing work. And in that case, people get super bogged down in the exact price that they should charge. Should this be $199 or $197 or $195? And they'll just sit and sort of spiral in the perfect number, so that they don't have to ever launch and start selling at the new rate that they're scared about upping themselves to, because it's not going to be perfect and they want to make sure it's just right. You also get this on websites, launching a new website or a new brand or picking your new name, because you're scared of what could happen. There's this like fear of success and fear of failure. You can let yourself get hung up in the small thing instead of having to actually put yourself out there. It's like a defense mechanism.
You hear that a lot, like the fear of success and the fear of failure going hand in hand. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because we hear it so much, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you can be afraid of both. They're opposites. How can you be afraid of both?
Our brains are pretty much afraid of any change that can possibly happen, and they're wanting to protect the status quo and the comfort of the life that they know already. That's because your subconscious is doing the driving, and it's driven by rewards and habits that it already has in stock. And so change, the unknown, whether it's that I'm going to look really foolish and be kicked out of the herd, we're a herding species at heart. So there's this fear of being made fun of that's just sort of ingrained into us, that we want to be accepted. But also, if I'm successful, then you kind of get this other side of, then you're also not part of the herd. People don't want to talk to me. What if it's too much, that people aren't going to want to be my friend or chatting with me anymore, or people aren't going to engage with me? All these things that could happen. But again, it's in your brain's sort of genetic and psychological need to belong to the group. And it's scary to do something different, but it also wants its rewards, where it knows that if you spend time goofing a little bit in social media every day, instead of focusing on creating your new website or your own social presence, and you're just scanning feeds, it's getting rewards through that process that it doesn't want to give up.
Yeah, that could bring us down a rabbit hole of talking about social media and how they've intentionally done that, made it very addictive and made it very rabbit hole-like. Um, so how can we drive the seat more, or are we doomed that 99.9999 whatever percent of our existence is out of our control? Is there a way we can drive it more?
Yes. And so you can change the rules of what your brain is going to focus on, because we've all learned to spot or focus on or be good in different areas.
Mhm.
And so one of the best examples of how things kind of move between your conscious and subconscious brain is when you learn to drive a car. When you were learning to drive a car, it was very tedious, very slow, very specific. That's your conscious brain. And you're really focused on, where are my hands? Where are the mirrors? What are my feet doing? Today, if you drove your car, you did not have all of these conscious thoughts. It was very systematic and easy. If you were to drive a new car, so you're on a rental, maybe, I know I used to have a step emergency brake in my car, and then I would drive my husband's car that has the pull e-brake, and I would always do this like step to nowhere, because my brain had set rules of how I drive. This is how we drive a car. This is what we do. And my brain has now adapted to that. And in my new car, I don't have the step brake. I don't do that anymore. And it didn't take very long to make this adjustment. And the things that our brains are focusing on, your brain gets what it expects. So if your brain is looking and you're training it to be looking for people to be judging you and saying something's not perfect and that you're not ready and you're not good, it's going to find that for you. It's only letting in so much information to your conscious brain, and it's sifting through a lot of stuff. So our subconscious can process 11 million bits of information per second, and your conscious brain can only do about 40, which is a big disparity between the two. So of the 11 million bits per second, it's only letting these 40 in for your conscious to be focusing on. So if you direct it and say, we're focusing on this other area, this is what we're going to be working on now, you can really train your brain to be looking for positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement, and just keep moving. The great thing about mindset is it's your brain, and all of what it's focusing on and learning, and you're teaching yourself, it's your choice, and you can change it pretty easily if you want to.
And can that be changed pretty quickly too?
It can. The thing that's important to note is, so if you've been telling yourself since you were 9 years old and you threw up on the stage when you were supposed to be public speaking, if you've been telling yourself every single day since then, and any time a presentation's come up, that you've always said, I'm terrible at this, I can't do public speaking, I'm bad at public speaking, your brain now has a really well ingrained rule that if someone says public speaking, you think, no, I'm bad at that. Instantly. You can't even stop that process in your brain. So you've maybe said this to yourself 500,000 times to get it to where it's set in your brain. You don't necessarily have to say it 500,000 more, but if public speaking was a goal you want to focus on, and you should only pick like 3 things that you really want to be the main focus for yourself on mindset at any given time. And so if you've got your 2 or 3 things, public speaking is one of them. You should be having pictures of yourself standing, even if it's photoshopped, in front of a room with a bunch of people clapping that are surrounding you. And you should have a alert that you set up on your phone that says, you're an amazing public speaker, and Melina Palmer, best public speaker ever, whatever. Things that are all around you that are reinforcing that you're good at this. And then you have to kind of train it. It doesn't have to take quite as long as it did to set the original, but it's not an overnight, just I thought it once and now it exists.
Right. Well, we have to practice, right?
Right.
we practice the negative thinking, we get to practice the positive thinking.
Exactly.
Change it. So this has been amazing, and I'm trying to keep things short. So do you have any other nuggets of wisdom that you can share with us about this? About mindset and about perfectionism?
Yeah, I would say that, again, you can change it yourself. And the best tip is to go through having those big couple of goals, whether it's 2 or 3, and then look at the small steps and all the things you can do to help get you there. I do have a freebie, which I think we'll get to. I don't know if that's right.
Go ahead.
which is,
I'd love to know.
Yay,
I'd love to know. Yay, freebie.
So I have a free mini course. It's called Master Your Mindset. And it actually walks you through this process of helping to figure out what those 3 goals should be, which is a hard thing to narrow down if you don't have the support to help you get there.
Especially for perfectionists.
Right. Right. So it's got, the video from me, it's got worksheets with it to help you determine what those goals are, and then to help set up some of these visualization techniques and different pieces around to help in the process of transitioning your brain along with the way that it naturally works instead of the way that you think it should, to really help streamline that process for you.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. I think I'm going to have to download it myself and take your course. Thank you for your time, for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.